Okay, well, tonight's project is going to be this hammer. Now, this is a hammer for doing body work, metal forming. And it's not bad, but it's not great. I mean, obviously the handle was swapped out on this thing, and we're gonna do something about that. But I also want to do something about these faces. Now, if you look, there's some really rough casting marks right down the middle of that face on both sides. And I think we want to smooth that over because you tend to get uneven results when we're dealing with shaping panels with this. And it's tough to see, but there is kind of a angled profile to that. So we're going to keep that. Okay, that helps with your striking surface. We don't want it to be dead flat because then we'll get dimples when the corners hit. Same thing here. It's crowned out in the middle, and we're going to keep that, but we're going to do some work on this to smooth that out. As far as this handle goes, I don't want to totally destroy it to get this off of there, but it might happen. Because what happens here is there's a wedge that goes down in between there, and you drive that wedge in, and that's what holds this on. And you can see it doesn't. This isn't the right handle for that. The other thing I don't really like about this is it's kind of skinny. You know, for doing this kind of work, you want something you can really get a hold of, and I think we can improve on this. And to do that, I'm going to use a chunk of wood. Now, this is a piece of white oak, and if you ever look at your hammers, you'll notice that the grain runs straight the long way, and that's for strength. If it went this way, it would just, pop right off. So here on this oak, the grain is real dense, and it runs this way. So once we get this off, we're going to cut this down, and then we're going to pick a profile that's going to be, we want a thicker handle on this, but definitely through the shoulder here. We're going to beef that up. We're going to make this almost straight and then taper it at the top so we can get this hammer head back on there. So we got a couple things to do. Let's get this off of there first. Okay, so here we are at the vise, and I think we're going to use a hammer to fix our hammer. We'll start with this nylon job, and I'm just going to drive this down, see if we can get it to kick out. Oh, come on. Can't be that easy. Something's going to go wrong, right? There you go. Here we are over at this little belt sander. And, when we were talking about drills, we said spend the extra money, get something really nice, and it's going to last you for a long time. Now, here's a case where you don't need to spend a ton of cash to get a pretty nice little tool. Now, this is from Freight, and it's got a 30-inch belt on it. It's also got a disc sander on this side. Haven't really used that because it's set up for adhesive discs, and everything else that I have is hook and loop. So at some point we'll swap that over. But this thing, I use this all the time, and it doesn't have to be a super expensive tool. This one works pretty well for the casual kind of fix it up. The belts are really cheap. I just restocked on belts. 6 different grits. I got 24 belts, about $15, and they work really well. Okay, so we're going to use this, and we're going to shape that face. We're just going to trim off, see how that goes. See if we can smooth that a little bit. Oh, plugged it in. Power helps. All right, here we go. Okay, so we're just a little bit into it, and already we can see a vast improvement. So I'm going to keep going on this, and we'll come back when I'm all done. I think you get the idea. So from where we were to where we are, I'd say you did pretty good. Now, if you saw me, I was working that thing kind of this way. Same thing here. And that's I wanted to preserve that crown. So there's no rough edges to catch the metal and to mar what we're working with. Same thing here. We really didn't take that much off. We just cleaned up that casting, made sure the edges were nice and smooth, and didn't let it get too hot. Took a break every now and again, and while I was at it, I hit it on the wire wheel, just took some of that surface rust off. So I'd say that's pretty well good, right? Okay, see about that handle. So here is our oak. Now what we want to do is, I kind of like the length, so we're going to stick with that. And I'm going to line this up pretty close to this edge. You back it off just a skosh. So if we want to make that a little bigger, we can. Make a mark there. And I think that's going to be pretty good for length. So we're going to stick with this original length, because what we'll do is once this is on there and we're happy with that fit, we're going to cut a wedge, stuff that in there, glue it, let it sit overnight, and then once that's all dry, we'll trim the extra off. Well, let's go long on that. Okay, so that's about where we want to be. Something like that. And there. And then this is 5/4 cut. So pull out our ruler. You're just over an inch. It's about 1 1/8 inches. So it's nice, thick stock. It's going to make a really nice handle. Okay, I'm going to go run that through the bandsaw. Stand by. We'll be right back. Okay. So, yeah, I'd take you with me over there, but we just had a bunch of work done. They dug up part of the water main, and I've got stuff moved around. I didn't have a good place to put you over there. Okay, so let's use this kind of as a guide for our new handle. And I don't mind the profile, but like we said, we want this to be a little bit chunkier. Okay, so that's where that is. All right, so we've got to do that on this side. We also got to get our profile on the edge, because this is a 3D shape. So we're going to have to shape this. It's sliding around on me. On all of our sides, right? Might as well go all the way through here. You don't have to go on every side, but it does help when you're shaping these things. It just gives you one more thing, a little insurance. Oops, sliding again. Okay. Perfect. Now, we've got our profile cut on all the sides. And what that means is that that's going to be waste, right? So we're going to cut this way on the bandsaw on the edge, and we're going to cut it this way on the bandsaw, and that's going to give us a profile on all 4 sides, something like this, right? But you know, girthier. All right, stand by. Let's get that cut out. Did you catch my mistake before? Yeah, it's great to mark these 2 sides, but if you mark these 2, where do your marks go after you bandsaw it? Right in the bin. So we'll mark them again. Notice that right after I got over to the saw. Yeah, well, that was a nice one. Okay, so now we're back there. Over here. Okay, try that again. Okay, so that makes a little more sense. It's really roughed in. You can see I got a little bit of chatter marks there for my bandsaw, so that blade has got just a little bit of pulse, and here, we'll set that up another day. It's okay for now. So next, we want to start shaping this. We've got kind of a long way to go on the top here, so we'll probably end up cutting that so that fits. But we use that belt sander again, and we'll start rounding that out, see what we end up with. Yeah, I'll be right back. So I got the cover off because we're going to swap out this belt for something a lot more aggressive, I think. So it's really easy on these. There's a tension wheel on the back. Take the tension off the belt. Let's see if we can eke it past this guard. Sometimes it gets a little finicky. And there's a guy down here. Yeah, it goes easy, he says. Oh, now you're done it. You went sideways with it. Might have to pop that top guard off. Okay, stand by. We're going to take that off. Sometimes at the end of a long day, you're just not going to win. You know, it's one of those that if it goes too much further, we're going to hang this up for tonight and start on it again tomorrow so we don't get hurt doing something dumb with the tool. Okay, so let's go 80 grit. We can go all the way down to 60. Let's see how this goes. I'm thinking this is going to be plenty aggressive. There's a guide bar underneath the table here that you got to get past. And I put this table extension on there because the Achilles heel on this belt sander was, in fact, the table. The casting wasn't very good, and it had these ridges on it that like to grab your workpiece. I didn't like that either. So I've got a nice piece of 6-ply plywood down there, and brand new belt. Here it goes. And it just makes it a lot nicer to work, and it's sacrificial. So if it gets chewed up, it's held on with some real strong double stick carpet tape, actually. stuff is great for templates or applications like this where you might want to take that off and replace it. And I didn't have screws driven through it, have to countersink them and everything else. Well, you can do it. Easy belt swap, right? Sure. Don't forget to tension that back up again. Okay. Put some tension on that belt. Put the cover down. Doesn't have to be crazy tight because we don't want to bind it up. But okay. So let's see how this goes. I'll tell you how that goes. That goes fast. With that 80 grit on there, that I'm barely touching it. We're getting there. Now, another tool that would work really well for this would be a oscillating spindle sander. You know, it's got a drum, and as it spins, it kind of moves up and down so you don't get the score marks. I don't have one, and I've got a space reserved for one down the road. But for this, I think we'll just keep banging away at it and maybe clean it up with the palm sander when we're done. Okay, I think you got the idea. I'm going to finish this up. We'll come back. Okay, so we got that roughed in to where I'm fairly well happy with that. You know, just I'm not being real exact with it. I'm just using the grip test. You know, trust your hands. That feels all right. Okay, so the other thing that I did is that's the size of the opening that we've got to get through on that hammerhead. So you can see we got quite a ways to come down, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this thicker shoulder here so that that hammerhead has something really nice and stable to sit down on. So we're going to bring this down right into about here and trim that whole thing down to about that profile. Okay, yeah, I should also note that as soon as we weren't talking here, hooked up the dust collection with the shop vac so we didn't have dust going everywhere, and had a mask on so we're not huffing that. So, okay, let's get that trimmed down, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're getting closer. I've got a nice fit there, and I'm happy with that. Now, of course, I do realize that, you know, fine, you can make this as chunky as you want it. It comes down to the strength of this here, okay? Because that's the weakest point. It's the least amount of wood. And that's where the force will be applied. It's really no bigger there than this, all right? This was more about, you know, this I thought was just too wimpy. There's just not enough there. But it also comes down to sometimes you can just kind of have fun using tools and seeing if you can make something a little better that fits you. Okay, now what we're going to do is switch over to the palm sander. And this is that hook and loop I was talking about before. And we're going to use the palm sander to do the shaping and smoothing on this thing. You know, this This is random orbital. We'll talk sanders sometime. But I'm going to hook this up to dust collection too, so I don't kick up a bunch of dust and don't have to have that all over everything. So while I do that, I'm going to sign off. No sense in listening to all that racket. And we'll come back and see what that looks like. Stand by. Okay, so I started off with some 80 grit, and I just finished it with a little bit of 220. Okay, you know, we're not building heirloom furniture here, but still got to hold on to it, and if we're going to spend the time to do it, it should at least look good. Okay, so I just noticed a little bit of chatter. We'll clean that up before we go too much further. Right down here. Okay, so we're kind of at that point now where we've got to split this right down the middle, and that's where we're going to drive that wedge down into. You know, you end up with something that looks like that. It's the old one. And what that does is it spreads these two fingers apart, you know, that way, and it holds on to the top of this so it doesn't move around. And we'll get that in there, we'll glue it, and we'll let it sit overnight. The other thing that I like to do is, especially on something like this that's going to take a bunch of repeated hits, just so that there's no chance at all of that moving around. Once we've got that wedge in there and it's glued, it's sat overnight, we trim this off because we got plenty of extra here. Okay, trim that off and get it flush. Then what we'll do is we'll fill, if you see that little edge on there, see there's a gap, we'll fill that with some epoxy, and then we'll let that sit. Then it ain't gonna ever go anywhere. Okay, so yeah, I am well pleased with that. That's gonna work out well. And you can really see now that we've got this cleaned up where that grain line is running the long way. So we know that's gonna be plenty strong. Okay, I'm going to clean up that little bit of chatter I noticed down here and get that cut. Be right back. Alright, so yeah, I got that chatter off of the handle. It's one of those things that you probably wouldn't have noticed it, but as soon as I knew it was there, that was going to just drive me bonkers because I knew it was, so fixed it. Okay, and there it is. Got that groove cut. You know, that's one of the nerve-wracking processes, and I've done a few of these handles, and you know, every time, here I got this little one that I did here, and just a little hammer for small places, tacks, that sort of thing. But you know, every time you do one of these things, that is the worst part, because you know, this down here, if you're shaping this and it doesn't go exactly like you want, you can fudge it and kind of get it to where it is. You screw that up, you're starting over. Okay, and I'd like to say that I've never done that before, but I'd be lying. So we're going to get some glue in there. We're not going to be shy about it. That fits over that. The little wedge I had from cutoffs from here. We're going to drive that down in there, and we're going to let that sit overnight. So to get the glue in there, we're going to use wood glue, and this stuff is excellent. I really haven't found anything that I like any better than this tight bond. And with a good wood glue, that glue joint's going to be stronger than the wood around it. Now, to get the glue down in there, because we want it to go all the way into the middle of that joint, there's a couple things that you can use. I keep toothpicks down here. Those work okay. I buy these things at Fleet Farm. They're like those little spoons that you get with the ice cream cups. You get like a 100 of them for a couple bucks. Those are nice for epoxy and that sort of thing, because you can just chunk them when you're done. But for wood glue, I've got this thing from these guys, and there's probably made by a bunch of other companies too, but it's got a silicone brush at one end that if you're doing like a long, like an edge joint, you can brush that and it gets real nice and even. And then because it's silicone, you just let it dry and it peels right off. And then the other end is a spatula. Same idea, that you don't have to worry about the glue on there, because if it dries, it just peels off. Okay, so squeeze some of this down in there. And somebody had asked what was on the Workbench top. Oops. The camera clobbered it with the glue. This stuff here. That is just grippy shelf liner. I keep that stuff around like crazy because it's great for working on. It is grippy. It's cheap. It lasts about forever if you don't light it on fire or really get it all chewed up, full of grease or something. And yeah, I've done both of those things. It's just nice for working on. Things don't slide around. So we got glue. Pretty happy with that all the way through that joint. And we'll put a little bit on our wedgie bit here. Don't need a lot because we got a lot in that other joint. But once that dries, that'll be as strong or stronger than the wood around it. Okay, so we slide that over that and get our wedge in there that we cut before. Come on. And let's drive that down in there. Again, using a hammer to fix a hammer. While we're doing this, we want to make sure that we're set here. We said we left that nice shoulder on there so that would anchor in there real nice. And we'll make sure it's square. You don't want to go too nuts with that, because if you go too far, those fingers will split, and guess what? Yep, you're starting over. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now there's some air gaps up here, but we don't care because we're going to cut that off. But I can see down in there, there's a nice amount of squeeze out on both sides. That glue has gotten all the way through that joint. Pretty happy with that. And then while we're at it, we can just wipe this off. See, it comes clean. So whether that glue is wet or dry, if you forget about it, you can just come back to it, get that off of there the next time you need it. Okay, I think we're going to do one more thing here tonight, and while we got to let this sit anyway, let's put a finish on this handle. We don't need a furniture finish or anything, but we want something that at least keeps some of the grease out. So let me grab that. Okay, so this is what we're going to use. This is teak oil. Interior, exterior. It's good for hardwood, obviously, for teak, mahogany, that sort of thing. Normally I'd be wearing gloves, but I am out, and honestly, things being what they are, I'm going to leave the gloves for somebody who really needs them. And I've bought gloves at Freight before. They're not horrible, but I know they've been doing a lot for donating supplies to doctors and nurses. And see how that goes on there? That's just going to seal that. Really brings the grain out nice, right? I'm glad we pulled those chatter marks out of there. Yeah, I've really been seeing them. And looks like we're going to have to get some up into that edge. But yeah, I don't really care if I got to wash my hands after using this. Let's get a little more on there and see if we can squeeze that up into this gap here. There we go. Yeah, it's one of those things too that if you're anything like me, that would drive you nuts. You would know that it's there. You look at it and you'll see that one white spot up in there. Does it matter? Of course it doesn't matter. But you know that it's there. And it's going to drive you nuts. So you take care of it. Well, you know, that's not a bad night's work there. I'm just going to prop this up on the edge of that. Keep some of that off of the work mat. So tomorrow we'll come back to that once that glue is dried, and we're going to cut that extra little bit off the top and put some epoxy down in there, and after that sets for about, just leave it for a day. Nothing that we need immediately. Let that epoxy set up. We'll be in pretty good shape. So here's where we started. You can see just a little beefier. But could you have bought a bigger handle for it? Well, sure. You could have gone and gotten a more traditional handle for it and just cut the top down like we did. It would have worked. But you know what? We're supposed to be staying home. And more than that, what a good way to get some practice in on the tools, do a little bit of building. And now you got something that you can say, yeah, I built that. All right, so I'm going to sign off for tonight, and we'll come back to that tomorrow, get that cleaned up. Catch you later. Well, so it's the next day plus one. I gotta say I'm pretty happy with that. I went back in here, like we had said, we epoxied the top and just filled in those couple little gaps in between there. And yeah, so there we go. You can see how those faces turned out compared to that rough cast that was on there before. There's that one. There's the other one. I'm pretty happy with that. Not a lot of work to go into there, but we got to use a few tools and spend a little time. Now you got something that looks pretty good. So all right, well, there you go. We got another one done. If you like what you're seeing, like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff down there. And yeah, we'll be back again with another project. Peace.